9 million Americans served during the period of the Vietnam War. They represented 10% of their generation. 6 million of them were volunteers. They were the oldest and best educated force America ever sent into harm's way. 97% would be honorably discharged. And today, the vast majority of them testify with their actions and their words that they are proud of their service and would serve again if called. November 14th, 1965, 10:48 a.m. Elements of the 7th Cavalry touched down at Landing Zone X-Ray. Within 30 minutes, the Battle of the Ia Drang began, the first major battle fought by the American Army in Vietnam. Over 3 harrowing days, vastly outnumbered American forces would hold out and ultimately repel enemy forces. American forces would never lose a major engagement during the ensuing 8 years of combat operations. Known as the Wall, the Vietnam Memorial stands in honor of those who served in the Vietnam War. The names of the men and women who gave their lives are inscribed in the order they were taken from us. 58,286 names. The youngest was Marine Private First Class Dan Bullock at 15 years of age, and the oldest was Navy Petty Officer First Class Kenna Taylor at 62. There are 3 sets of fathers and sons, 1 set of stepbrothers, 39 pairs of brothers, 8 women, 16 clergy, and 155 Medal of Honor recipients. And let us not forget, there are still more than 1,600 missing and unaccounted for personnel. The French were in Vietnam before the Americans and lost more than 70,000 lives. More than 400,000 Allied troops served with the American forces. Joining as allies with the United States were the Republic of Korea, Thailand, the Republic of the Philippines, Australia, and New Zealand. These allies suffered more than 5,000 lives lost during the course of the war. American combat forces left Vietnam in 1973. 2 years later, Saigon fell. Over those last 2 years, without American and Allied combat forces in the region, casualties in Southeast Asia were doubled what they had been during the 10 years prior. To our Vietnam veterans who answered the nation's call to serve, we thank you. Your greatness is etched in history from the battlefields of Southeast Asia to the neighborhoods of hometown America, where you continue to bring blessings and inspiration to your families and your country today. To the families of our Vietnam veterans, we thank you for the greatness of your support, sacrifice, vigilance, and compassion. And to our allies who stood by us 50 years ago, we thank you. The greatness that was earned by this generation never left you, and it never will.
Hello and welcome to the Patriot View. I am the CIA Cowboy along with my co-host Patriotic Veteran, and we are excited to be here today. This is a makeup stream from Friday night due to both of us being severely under the weather, so to speak.
Oh yeah, under it, in it, upside down.
I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Toto.
That stuff was crazy.
It got pretty crazy here, but it got crazy around my house rather than at my house. So we were blessed in that sense that we didn't actually have any major damage. I had a piece of metal get blown off the back porch roof and some tree limbs come down, but no major damage to the property.
Well, that's good.
My brother
I
was
heard
not so lucky.
Covington had some damage. I saw.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't really know where
Covington
that's
got.
at, but
That's a little ways
decent.
away from me. That's about 40 miles north.
Okay, I thought
I
it was actually a little farther than that, but
I have a couple of coworkers who actually live up in that area just south of Covington. Um, but my brother wasn't quite so lucky. He lives in Missouri, in western Missouri, and he just put a lean-to shed in about 6 weeks ago. It was a unit that somebody had given to him, and they loaded it on a trailer, brought it in. He anchored it down, set it next to his shop. The wind caught that, picked it up, and it was like I think it was a 14 by 14 by 20 shed, and the wind just ripped it out of the ground, slung it across his yard,
whew,
slammed it into the back of his car, tore his new car up. But yeah, it was pretty brutal weather for him. There was a couple tornadoes. They did the same thing they did last year when they hit this area. One went south of the house, one went north, but neither of them actually hit our property. They Last year they were closer. That we had two of them at the same time, literally crisscross about a mile and a half from our house or so, and then they both touched down just maybe half a mile after they crossed paths with each other in the sky. It was pretty crazy.
yeah, we had one like 6 miles from my house. That I sent the video. I think I sent it to you in Facebook Messenger maybe,
Yep.
but I sent it to Devin too, and that was literally you could watch it touch down 6 minutes from the house. All right,
Well, we got a
so
jam-packed show today, don't we?
yep, we're gonna start off with a funny here. We kind of skipped. We're already kind of to what we did this week, but Patrick has a joke to tell us to start our day off.
All right.
All right, so I'm gonna give him my headset and he's gonna tell us a joke.
All right.
Why are chickens so funny?
I don't know. Why are they so funny?
Because
You doing all right today, little buddy?
Because
Because. So this
that's pretty
week's
good.
it's been a crazy week weather-wise. I was actually running a league race Friday night, which you were not able to get into due to your internet
Yeah,
being
my
down.
internet went out.
I thought mine was going to go down. Believe it or not, my power never flickered. My internet never went down. So I was thankful for that. I was able to finish the race, though I did finish 15 laps down due to a whole nother issue. Uh,
Yeah, I heard that was kind of a drama fest.
it was, but it was still a lot of fun. I've learned a lot racing with the guys in the league. Definitely getting better at holding my line. So, look out, Joe
No,
Logano. Here I
there's
come.
no replacement for real time, man. That's the only way to get better, you know.
Truth. Well, man, we have got a jam-packed schedule, and we're
Yeah, we better get
introducing
going, huh?
a brand new segment to the show. This segment will be here every week going forward. This week it's going to be a little longer than normal, but this segment is going to be called "This Week in History." Now, I'm going to let Patriotic explain why this segment is going to be longer than all the upcoming segments after this.
Basically found a really cool website which I tagged in our document there. If you see that pinned message on top of the chat, you can follow along with the show. That's I literally put everything we're going to talk about into a document for the show. I'm going to start doing that every week as well. Did the same thing last week. We just don't have a nice short little thing for you, so that's just a Google Docs thing. But basically, I found this website that kind of gives us like a cheat sheet to all the cool things that happened in history around the world, and I found it at the end of last week. So we got a whole month to do basically. So we're gonna kind of fly through it. We won't discuss it so in depth this week, but in the weeks coming, we'll do some research on each one of these. Chat them up a little bit, whatever.
All right. Well, lead us off, March 15th.
Yeah, the most famous one, right? The Ides of March. Ides literally mean it's Latin for middle. Julius Caesar was assassinated in the Senate chamber in Rome by Brutus and fellow conspirators. After first trying to defend himself against a murderous onslaught, Caesar saw Brutus with a knife and asked, "Et tu, Brute?" Caesar then gave up the struggle and was stabbed to death.
Crazy. At that point, yeah, I guess maybe he felt at the point that his best friend betrayed him that what was the point of trying to go on being the leader?
Someone he called a son, yeah.
Right. King Charles of England on March 4th, 1681, granted a huge tract of land in the New World to William Penn to settle an outstanding debt. This area later became known as Pennsylvania.
Cool. I wonder how that went from Mr. William Penn's possession to being a state. See, that's what I'd like to look more into there.
Yep. I
March 5th,
actually have some
1770.
information on that
Oh,
I will get to you. Not, I don't have it in front of me, but I
okay.
remember reading a book when I was a kid, and it was kind of a kid's storybook, but it was the details of how Pennsylvania became a state and how the Quakers had a lot to do with that. It was pretty
Oh, yeah.
interesting reading.
Is that the Quaker state?
The Quaker state, thus the name Quaker State Oil.
Huh. I just pieced that together right meow.
I'm curious if Quaker Oats was founded there. You know, that's of all the Quakers in the
Right.
world, I think that man's image is probably the single most iconic image of a Quaker that we all know. You know, the long white hair and the
Right.
black hat. I ate so much of that as a kid when I sat down, I squished.
Man, I don't even like oatmeal anymore hardly.
I like steel cut oats. But
They,
moving on.
They force fed us them some bitches in the army. I tell you what, you can only put so much tasteless food down before you're just like, all
Right.
right.
Starts coming out the same way it went in.
You know when you start appreciating grits, something's wrong.
Hey, I love some grits now, brother. You give me a plate full of grits with some butter and some salt and pepper on it and some over easy eggs and some toast or biscuits. I'm a happy camper. A little bit of
I mean,
molasses to dip it in.
You'd have been just happy down there in Fort Benning, Georgia. Them ladies love throwing some butter in them grits. It was like a pool.
Heck yeah.
All right, next one up. March 5th, 1770. The Boston Massacre occurred as a group of rowdy Americans harassed British soldiers who then opened fire, killing 5 and injuring 6. The first man killed was Crispus Attucks, an African American. British Captain Thomas Preston and 8 of his men were arrested and charged with murder. Their trial took place in October with colonial lawyer John Adams defending the British. Captain Preston and 6 of his men were acquitted. 2 others were found guilty of manslaughter, branded, then released. And yes, that says branded.
Now, why is the name John Adams important, do you think?
I think he was president number 2.
He would be the second president of the United States of America. Started out defending British soldiers and ended up fighting them. Both in pen, you know, using the pen to help draft things like the Constitution, and in action. His whole family was very involved in the Revolution. Interesting
His
twist.
son, John Quincy Adams, was I think the 6th president. Is that right?
Yes, I believe he was number 6.
I probably should know that type of stuff.
I should have passed history class as much as I love it. March 23rd, 1775, very famous moment in American history. Patrick Henry ignited the American Revolution with a speech before the Virginia Convention in Richmond stating, "I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." And I think it's interesting that falls this week, considering our NASCAR interest this week is Richmond.
Yep.
That's kind of odd and funny that it falls on that same, you know, we're talking about it on that same day, Richmond, Virginia. And he told him, he said, I don't know what anybody else is going to choose, but either give me liberty or give me death. I want one or the other. I will not accept a mediocre.
And you know that phrase is super famous, right? Give me
Very.
liberty or give me death. But this was a man who lived by it. He didn't just say it. He didn't just change his Facebook status to that.
He was hanged.
Or get a tattoo of it. Yeah.
Hanged.
John Adams actually said something along the lines that he said too whenever he was making his appeal to the Congress to engage in war, and he said, and this is not an exact quote, but it's something like, "In my life, let me live in a country that is free." And those two were very like-minded gentlemen who both lived and died for their countries. I mean,
Solid Band brings up an interesting point. She said, I feel like a lot of people who throw that saying around don't fully understand what all they're really saying. You are not wrong. You are not wrong, because many of us will stand there and quote that quote, you know, when we're safe and protected. But when we're standing facing something that could possibly harm us or our families, would we take that same stand? You know, you and
That's
I
where
had the
my
you remember the conversation we had where we talked about what the men in the revolution were thinking about and how they
yeah,
weren't thinking about their wife and child at home. They were thinking about their grandchildren and their great grandchildren. And they were thinking far into the future. And they're like, it's
for sure.
better that we have a rough time of it right now and that some of us die so that our grandchildren and great grandchildren can live in a free country. So she's not wrong when she says that people don't understand what they're actually saying.
Well, and that's where my little coin phrases come from, right? Don't talk about it, be about it.
That's
Anybody
right.
can say some shit, but whenever the time comes, are you gonna toe the line?
Right.
That entire speech that Patrick Henry made is linked into there. So you guys, if you want to look up the entire speech, it's there for you.
That's a good read.
March 17th, 1776. Early in American Revolutionary War, the British completed their evacuation of Boston following a successful siege conducted by patriots. This event is still commemorated in Boston as Evacuation Day.
I did not know that.
Also, widely celebrated in the world today on the same day as St. Patrick's Day.
St.
Right?
Patty's Day. So here's a question. Remember how we talked about they were voting on making St. Patrick's Day a federal holiday?
Well,
Why
they
not?
weren't
Why
voting; they
not
just
make?
introduced it. But
Or
yes,
yeah, they introduced it. Why not make Evacuation Day a federal holiday? Seems like that would be a little more fitting. Just saying.
probably. Yeah, that'd be cool. You ought to call your congressman and let him know.
That's actually a good point. I may do that. I've got a couple. Actually, uh, one of my state senators I actually work for. He owns some of the funeral homes that I work for as a funeral escort, and I know him personally. So I may bug in his ear about that.
Yeah, that'd be cool as heck. March 1st, take it away.
March 1st, 1781, formal ratification of the Articles of Confederation was announced by Congress. Under the Articles, Congress was the sole governing body of the new American national government consisting of the 13 original states. The Articles remained in effect throughout the Revolutionary War until 1789 when the current U.S. Constitution was adopted. So these would be the documents that our government um, was originally founded on. And then the Constitution was drafted in order to perfect those documents for the American people to build a living document that would live on through generations and be able to accommodate all the different adaptations that would come to society. You know, things like cars, automatic weapons, things like all of that wasn't invented at the point that the Constitution was written, but it was taken into consideration that there would be technological and civilization advances as time went on. So that's an interesting fact.
Tying right into that one, March 4th, 1789, the first meeting of the new Congress under the new U.S. Constitution took place in New York City.
Very cool. So just 3 days later, they were already in session and doing their jobs.
8 years and 3 days.
Or 8 years and 3 days. Yep, you're right. I didn't read that right. Interesting. Wonder why it took 8 years before they met again. I guess maybe they were still that was finishing out the Revolutionary War because I don't think that the Revolutionary War actually finished out until like 1787, something like that. It might have been even 1789. Um, March 25th, 1807, the British Parliament abolished the slave trade following a long campaign against it by Quakers and others. And I cannot remember that fellow's name, but there is a movie called Amazing Grace that if you have not seen, you should see. It tells the story of the man who led that campaign to abolish the slave trade and all the different things that he did to bring that to pass, including taking members of the parliament and their wives on what was supposedly a dinner cruise up the river, but it ended up being a tour past multiple slave ships where they were able to see, smell, and hear what was going on the ships. And he did that in an effort to show
Right. Oh,
them just how horrible it was.
it's amazing it took us another 60 years.
Right, it did.
But that was really the start of the world ending slavery in first world countries. We didn't really call them first world countries at the time, but the powers of the world started ending slavery after that.
his
Um,
name was William Wilberforce. I couldn't remember his name, but I knew it was an odd one. William Wilberforce. And Amazing Grace, it tells the story of him. Now, he was paired up. He got a lot of his information about the slave trade from another famous man, John Newton. And I don't know if you know this or not. Do you know who John Newton was?
Nope, but it's not a name I'm familiar with.
John Newton penned some words. He was a slave ship captain who was hated by his crew for his cruelty. He was so hated by his crew that one night he was washed overboard during a storm, and rather than throwing him a rope, one of his crewmen harpooned him in the hip and pulled him back
Ooh.
onto the ship. He was crippled permanently, but after that, he became so convinced that slavery was evil that he changed his ways, developed a relationship with God, and William Wilberforce got a lot of his information about the slave trade from him and took a lot of knowledge from him. Now, what he is famous for is penning the words to one of the most well known songs in the world, Amazing Grace. So I think that's kind of interesting that William Wilberforce drew a lot of strength and knowledge from the man who wrote that song.
Heck yeah. That's cool. That's probably what they call the movie Amazing Grace, huh?
Yes, it is.
Will you take the next one? I'm down further in our documents here.
Okay.
Adding in a couple things real quick.
All right. March 4th, 1830. Former President John Quincy Adams returned to Congress as a representative from Massachusetts. He was the first ex-president ever to return to the House, and he served 8 consecutive terms. Now, this would be John Adams' son, and I believe he was the 6th president. So he went back into public service as a congressman or a representative to the House of Representatives and served 8 consecutive terms. That's a long time to serve.
It is a long time.
All right, you want to take the next one, or are you still filling in?
I'm still. Actually,
Okay.
what I'm trying to do is find our Facebook link. I created us a Facebook page, and I wanted to put that in there for everybody to see. But
Oh, did we put that in the mods channel by chance? I think I put it in the mods channel in Discord.
Oh, okay. It's just facebook.com/the Patriot
Patriot View. Is it the Patriot View?
It is the Patriot View.
Okay.
For some reason, they wouldn't let me put Patriot View. It might have been took or something.
Probably been taken.
But that will now be in the notes.
All right. Thank you, Solid. You rock. All right, March 6th, 1836. This is a famous day in history, and this one will be especially relevant to burning ashes. Fort Alamo fell to the Mexican troops led by General Santa Anna. The Mexicans had begun the siege of Texas Fort on February 23rd, ending it with the killing of the last defender. Remember the Alamo became a rallying cry for Texans who went on to defeat Santa Anna in the Battle of San Jacinto in April. And that's also relevant to us because of where we live now, because one of the famous people who was killed at the Alamo was a senator from Tennessee, or a congressman from Tennessee, David Crockett.
Davy Crockett.
Man, I know the words to that whole song. I saw every one of those Disney movies. My kids have seen them too. There's nothing like watching old Davy beat the river pirates.
I had a 6th grade teacher, Mr. Frank Laka, who is one of the smartest men I've ever met in my whole life. And when we would play dodgeball, whenever you got down to one person on a team, that's the song he'd sing until you got knocked out.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. I remember one scene in particular from the Davy Crockett movies where he made a bet with a bunch of guys in a pub that he could shoot his rifle backwards over his shoulder, bounce the ball off of a skillet, bounce it off of another piece there in the saloon, and then catch it in his mouth. And his buddy's like, "You don't want to do that. You can't do that." He's like, "Just trust me, I got this." When nobody was looking, he slid a musket ball in his mouth, cheeked it. And then he fires the weapon. It bounces off the skillet, bounces off something else, and you don't see where it went. And then he opened, he kind of opened his teeth, and he's got the musket ball clenched between his teeth. I'll never forget that. Hey, Flying Venom, good to see you in stream, brother. Now, this guy, Patriotic Flying Venom, is somebody we need to get you to know. He is a young man from Michigan who, at 18 years old, unseated a 20-year incumbent in an election.
Nice.
So we'll have him on to talk about that one day in the near future. I met him playing some Warzone.
Okay.
All right. Next topic.
March 10th, 1862, the first issue of U.S. government paper money occurred as 5, 10, and $20 bills began circulation.
I bet that was a lot of money back then. I mean, you're talking about
Dude, I can
five
imagine.
bucks could probably buy a horse.
That's what I was thinking. That's probably the price of a horse.
Yeah. March 9th, 1864, Ulysses S. Grant commissioned as a lieutenant general and became commander of the Union armies.
March 5th, 1868, the U.S. Senate convened as a court to hear charges against President Andrew Johnson during impeachment proceedings. The House of Representatives had already voted to impeach the president. The vote followed bitter opposition by the radical Republicans in Congress to Johnson's Reconstruction politics in the South. However, the effort to remove him failed in the Senate just by one vote, and he remained in office.
So, Solid asks, why did we migrate away from the gold standard and go to paper money? A short answer is just fine. Now, I'm not fully versed in that, but I believe the idea was security. The fact that not everybody had access to a gold mine, not everybody had gold dust or nuggets in their possession, but those who did became targets for raiders and things like that. So I believe the idea was that the federal government would store and secure the gold, and then the money would be backed up by the gold in storage, and that was once true. However, today we do not have enough gold in our storage to cover the amount of money that we have in certain.
Convenience and reliability as well. Gold powder, gets stuck in your paper bags that you're carrying it in. They didn't have Ziploc back in the day, so
Right.
and also gold, any gold like nuggets or anything they had, they make gold coins by weight. Gold's a very soft metal and it would wear. It just wears off.
Yep.
Simple as that.
The weight
So
would reduce over time. So
a quarter of an ounce in 2 years would not be a quarter of an ounce anymore.
right. Kind of like the US dollar today. Think back to when we were kids, when you could go to McDonald's and for $2.99 you could get a Big Mac, a large fry, and a 64-ounce drink by just saying supersize me.
Right. All right. March 31st. That's where we're at, right?
Yep.
The Eiffel Tower, or the Tour Eiffel, was opened on March 31st, 1889, and was the work of Gustave Eiffel, who was a bridge engineer. It was made for the centenary of the French Revolution and was chosen instead of over 100 other plans that were given. So centenary would be a 100-year anniversary, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I'm going to guess that would be the same as centennial. So he competed with more than 100 other people for a plan to build a monument and won. And the Eiffel Tower is quite the engineering feat. Um, that's a pretty impressive structure. I've never seen it other than in pictures and in flight sim, but
Yeah.
it is definitely pretty impressive to have stood that long and not been damaged by weather. Because I don't know what the weather is in France, but I assume they would get high winds and storms from time to time, being that near the English Channel. They'd have to get some
Oh,
westerly wind.
March 25th. You got that one?
I got you. March 25th, 1911. Ooh, 1911. Colt. No.
Yeah.
That's where my mind goes. A raging fire erupted inside a garment factory in New York City, killing 123 young women employed as low-paid seamstresses, along with 23 men. The fast-spreading flames engulfed the 8th and 9th floors of the Triangle Shirtwaist Company in Lower Manhattan in just a few minutes. About 50 of the victims had jumped to their deaths rather than perish from the flames. The sensational tragedy spurred natural interest concerning the rights of mostly immigrant women workers of the New York garment industry who labored long hours, 6 or 7 days a week, in cramped, dangerous conditions for about $5 weekly pay. So we're talking about sweatshops. That
Pretty
would be the
much.
term we use today for things like that.
Oh, there's so them $5 bills went right there.
Yep, there you go. It's a week's pay.
Whew.
And that was in 1911. So imagine
That's
$5
crazy.
in 1862, 50 years before.
Well, everybody knows about this one probably not the dates and stuff, but the Spanish flu first reached America as 107 soldiers became sick at Fort Riley, Kansas. 1/4 of the U.S. population eventually became ill from the deadly virus, resulting in 500,000 deaths. The death toll worldwide approached 22 million by the end of 1920.
It's a lot of people.
If only they had them Chinese masks.
Yeah, if they just had a mask. March 21st, 1918, during World War I, the Second Battle of the Somme began as German General Erich von Ludendorff launched an all-out drive to win the war. The battle began with a 5-hour artillery barrage, followed by a rush of German troops. The offensive lasted until April 6th and resulted in the Germans gaining about 35 miles of territory. Allied and German casualty figures for both battles approached 500,000. Half a
Jesus.
million people.
In a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of people.
March 4th, 1933, newly elected President Franklin D. Roosevelt took office and delivered his first inaugural address attempting to restore public confidence during the Great Depression, stating, quote, "Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself," end quote. His cabinet appointments included the first woman to a cabinet post, Secretary of Labor Frances Perkins. Now, do
Interesting.
you know Franklin Roosevelt's middle name?
Delano.
A lot of people confuse that and the name Eleanor, or combine them both. Do you ever notice
Delano.
that?
Delano
Yeah,
Roosevelt.
they
I
do. I
think,
swear to God.
from what I understand, she was a fairly confused lady in some points of her life. Not as confused as those who claim they've talked to her since her death, but but confused nonetheless. So, Frances Perkins, first cabinet post for a lady. That's a big piece of history because we're talking in 1933. We're talking prior to the women's right to vote, aren't we? When did women get the right
Oh,
to vote?
I don't know. Maybe that'll be in here
Let's see.
somewhere. 72? No,
No,
earlier than
no,
that. It was 50.
1919 and ratified
Oh,
on
okay.
1920. So we're talking just over a decade after women got the right to vote. We have a woman who's been placed in a very high appointed, presidentially appointed office. Impressive.
Solid
March,
wants to know where the Spanish flu came from.
the Spanish. I'm
I
gonna
said
guess.
Spain.
I think it actually I think it came from Mexico. I think it the troops in Fort Riley would have most likely been involved in conflicts with Mexican troops. My uncle was stationed at Fort Riley for most of his military career. Of course, that was much after the Spanish flu outbreak, but I believe that at that point in time they would have been in conflict with Mexican troops in Texas.
I believe those soldiers were part of the 1st Infantry Division fighting in World War One.
Big Red One.
Yep.
March 24th, 1934, the Philippine Islands in the South Pacific granted independence by President Franklin D. Roosevelt after nearly 50 years of American control.
Do you think that just comes with like, how do they get to that point? Like, we don't need them anymore. Let's just let them be free.
Right?
They have to buy
Well,
themselves
I
freedom.
think the I think the thing is that America was never set up to be a world empire. That wasn't the goal of the founding fathers. Whereas most other countries in the world that had any kind of military force, be it Rome, be it England, or Greece, they all sought to take over the world, and America really didn't. I don't know why we had control of the Philippines in the first place, except maybe they were a colony in the 1800s, because if 50 years from 34 would have put it back to 1884. So maybe in the late 1800s, the Philippines were an American colony and we were helping them get a government set up. I don't know. Um, I'll have to go back and look into that.
March 12th, 1938, Nazis invaded Austria, then absorbed the country into Hitler's Reich.
Woof. That's a dark
And it
day in history.
begins.
March 11th, 1941. During World War II, the Lend-Lease program began, allowing Britain to receive American weapons, machines, raw materials, training, and repair services. Ships, planes, guns, and shells, along with food, clothing, and metals, went to the embattled British, while American warships began patrolling the North Atlantic and U.S. troops were stationed in Greenland and Iceland. We must be the great arsenal of democracy, President Roosevelt declared, concerning the fight against Hitler's Germany. The initial appropriation was $7 billion, but by
Oh,
1946 the figure reached $50 billion in aid from the U.S. to its allies. In today's term, we are talking about much more than $50 billion.
yeah.
You're probably talking closer to 500 billion, half a trillion dollars in aid. But the difference is that aid went to somebody who was actually fighting for our protection as well, to keep Hitler from marching over our troops.
Yep.
Hey, Blue Falcon, best two
Love Blue
Twitch
Falcon.
streamers. I love his opinion of the show.
Yeah. We should make everybody talk like that.
Right?
March
Start
2nd,
censoring.
1943. During World War II in the Pacific, a Japanese convoy was attacked by 137 American bombers. As the Battle of Bismarck Sea began, the convoy included 8 destroyers and 8 transports carrying 7,000 Japanese soldiers heading towards New Guinea. 4 destroyers and all 8 transports were sunk, resulting in 3,500 Japanese drowned, ending Japanese efforts to send reinforcements to New Guinea.
That would have convinced me to stop. March 13, 1943, a plot to kill Hitler by German army officers failed as a bomb planted aboard his plane failed to explode due to a faulty detonator. Oh, now if I'm not mistaken, that was made into a movie called Inglourious Basterds. Am I wrong in that?
Inglourious Bastards was about a plot to kill Hitler, but there was like 3 attempts within like 2 or 3 months right in this area. One of them, they brought the bomb, they forgot the detonator. They couldn't find their short fuse detonator, which back in the day they used like waxed gunpowder for fuses, to where you put an ounce of gunpowder in there with some wax, and hopefully it burns slow enough to give you 5 minutes to get out of the room. But that was not that was a different incident. This is a different incident, and then the one that the movie Valkyrie was made after is still a different one.
Okay. Valkyrie, that was the other one that was about a plot to kill.
March 1st, 1961, President John F. Kennedy established the Peace Corps, an organization sending young American volunteers to developing countries to assist with healthcare, education, and other basic human needs.
That is still in operation today. I know some people that have worked with it. March 31st, 1968, President Lyndon Johnson made a surprise announcement he would not seek re-election as a result of the Vietnam conflict. Johnson himself alluded to the deep roots of the unraveling of America in his surprise announcement, which said, "With America's sons in the fields far away, with America's future under challenge right here at home, with our hopes and the world's hopes for peace and the balance every day, I do not believe that I should devote an hour or a day of my time to any personal partisan causes or to any duties other than the awesome duties of this office, the presidency of your country."
So I read this and I was shocked. I did not know that this was such an event back in the day. But whenever this actually happened, the reaction of the populace was outstanding. Like it was they were all awestruck with that he would not opt to run for another one, and a lot of people hated him because of it. They called him selfish, self-centered, narcissistic, all that stuff, because
and
they felt that he was abandoning the country in the middle of a war, basically.
Right. And if you go back to a few years prior to that and look at what led to us going to Vietnam, he was very directly responsible for that. He was very good friends with Mr. Bell of Bell Helicopters, which made the helos in the background pictures you hear. And Mr. Bell became a millionaire almost overnight.
Good art.
We're having a pretty good Sunday there, Blue Falcon. Hope you are too.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, Mr. Bell was a friend of President Johnson, became a mate almost overnight. Carry contracts for him.
Huh. No wonder they're upset. March 22nd, 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was passed by the U.S. Senate and then sent to the states for ratification. The ERA, as it became known, prohibited discrimination on the basis of gender, stating, "Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex," and that the Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Although 22 of the required 38 states quickly ratified the amendment, opposition arose over concerns that women would be subject to the draft and combat duty along with other legal concerns. The ERA eventually failed by 3 states to achieve ratification despite an extension of the deadline to June 1982.
And here we are in 2023, where 2 presidents ago, we had somebody who actually brought about the draft. interesting. Be subject to the very thing that we feared 50 years.
Imagine telling them boys that were sitting in Congress in 1972 talking about equal rights. Imagine looking one of them in the eyes and being able to honestly say that in the next 60 years, girls can be boys if they want.
Right, and nobody would be able to do or say anything about it. And that imagine telling them at that point in time that our schools would be teaching things like gender studies, gardeners.
Yeah, that's I'm glad I live in a small ass town for that reason. That's
I imagine President Kennedy would not have been too happy about some of that.
yeah. Here's a big one.
Very big one. March 29th, 1973. The last combat troop leave Vietnam. 50 years ago, 29th, we did the Tropic Thunder Stream. Had a great time flying Hueys through Vietnam. We always do that on Vietnam Veterans Day. I imagine
Well, at
that
least
day
somebody
was
had a great time.
yeah, yeah. You had a bit of a rough time.
Yeah, I made Mr. Bell very rich because I wrecked at least 6 of his helicopters in one go.
Your insurance company hates you. But I imagine that day was pretty rough for a lot of guys who survived Vietnam and came home. I don't know a single Vietnam veteran who served in theater that did not lose somebody that they knew personally.
Yeah, there was a big loss of life in that war. Obviously more for them than for us, which is always the case in American wars. But I kind of imagine it would be along the lines of how Afghanistan veterans feel whenever we just up and left, but probably
Right.
on a bigger scale because the death toll was so high. The Allied death toll was so high.
58,220. And
So
women. There were women killed there too.
that's over 10 times the amount of lives lost in Afghanistan. So yeah, I would imagine they were pretty salty over that.
That video that we watched coming in, that's what Mr. Elliott was talking about, the fact that it had been 50 years.
Yeah.
And I found out watching that video that there's actually 3 women's names. I did not know that.
Nor did I. There is a link attached to that in our document there. If you guys want to read a full story put out by the VA regarding the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War.
Excellent article.
And actually, that the 50th anniversary is what prompted me to choose my background for the day. That's a painting done by someone.
And your background is what prompted me to choose mine.
I think it's a very, very fitting background for the day.
Perfect.
March 27th, 1977, the worst accident in the history of civil aviation occurred as 2 Boeing 747 jets collided on the ground in the Canary Islands, resulting in 570 deaths.
That makes me wonder. I'd want to go look that up at some point. Maybe we could cover that in a flight sim, something. How they hit each other on the ground and killed 570 people. They had to be moving.
There's a docu-series called Air Disasters.
Oh yeah.
It's outstanding, and one of their episodes is on that.
They cover that. I bet they cover the Gimli glider too. Ever heard that story? That was an aviation.
I would guess there's 40 or more episodes that cover tons of the air disasters. But I think if I watched it probably a year ago, the one on the 2 747s, and I think is what had happened was one of them did not get clearance to taxi to the runway.
Right.
He missed his call sign or something, like Tower told him, like Boeing 737, you're good to go to the runway, and he thought it was his call sign, whatever it was, and so they advanced, and then they got on the runway and got hit by an aircraft that had landed.
Incoming.
I think is the way that went.
That's the only thing I could figure is one of them had to be landing because they'd have to be at high speed to kill everybody in the. So March 29th. Go ahead.
I think you're on March 28th, by the way.
28th.
But
yeah.
I think with that, if I remember correctly, I believe whenever the landing jet hit the taxiing jet, it was either right next to, or I think parts of the plane and stuff hit the rescue building where all the fire trucks and rescue personnel was. I think that's why it turned out to be so bad, is because
they couldn't get them out.
They couldn't be there to rescue anybody.
Right. Okay, that makes.
Now, don't quote me on it. Like I said, I think that's the way I remember the docu-series stating it went.
March 28th, 1979, near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant accident occurred in which uranium in the reactor core overheated due to the failure of a cooling valve. Pressure relief valve then stuck, causing the water level to plummet, threatening a catastrophic nuclear meltdown. The accident resulted in the release of radioactive the atmosphere and created a storm of controversy over the necessity and safety of nuclear power plants. So I've actually been watching, just finished up last night actually, a TV show called Chernobyl that takes a good look at what happened in Russia with Chernobyl's incident. And then we just recently had a meltdown of sorts. We don't really know how bad it was because Japan hasn't been very open about it, but we had a nuclear incident in Japan. It's definitely a dangerous thing to play with, but at the same time, you know, over how many nuclear power plants are there throughout the world, and how many of them have had major issues like this, and then how many coal burning? Oh, there's real life beeping in. My clothes are done. How many coal burning power plants do we have across the world, and how many of those have had incidents that have caused loss of life or long term damage to the surrounding area? That'd be an interesting look.
Yep. Um, do you know what heavy water is by chance?
Yes.
So I did not know. I was watching another docu series about it's called Most Daring or Most Dangerous or Most Daring Raids of World War II, and a group of soldiers went into a German power plant where they manufactured heavy water.
Yep.
And so I kind of looked up what heavy water was, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's neat that someone came up with the idea to, I guess, change the properties of water to make it literally heavier and cool better.
Yep. Basically turned it into a coolant.
Yep. March 29th, 1979, in the U.S. Congress, the House Select Committee on Assassinations released its final report regarding the killings of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy.
So all three of them in one. March 30th, 1981. Newly elected President Ronald Reagan was shot in the chest while walking toward his limousine in Washington following a speech inside a hotel. The president was then rushed into surgery to remove a .22 caliber bullet from his left lung. I should have ducked, Reagan joked. Three others were also hit, including Reagan's press secretary, James Brady, who was shot in the forehead but survived. The president recovered from the surgery and returned to his duties. That incident, that one incident, is what has prompted a lot of gun related legislation over the last 40 years.
I could see it.
The Brady Bill. Heard that brought up in times past. That's directly
Yep.
with Brady.
March 26, 1992, Soviet cosmonaut Sergei Krikalev returned to a new country, Russia, after spending 313 days on board of the Mir space station. During his stay in space, the Soviet Union collapsed and became the Commonwealth of Independent States.
You and I talked a little bit about this the other day when we were setting the show up. That I wonder how he felt coming home knowing that everything that he knew as far as government had just changed. You know, who's
Yeah,
calling the shots? Who's the guy that's calling the shots that pushes the button that brings him home? Does he still get to come home? You know, it
and,
makes you wonder what his personal politics were, and if the Kremlin was aware of that, how that might affect his return.
yeah.
Like, oh no, he doesn't agree with
I
us.
wonder if
Don't
he
bring
had
him
a
back.
wife and kids at home too. Like, was he up there like, listening to the radio and they're like, "Oh, hey, sorry, Mr. Cosmonaut, Russia's gone now." He's
Right.
like, "Wait, what?"
And he's up there nearly a year, 313 days. That's the better part of a year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's 10 months. Um, March 19, 2003, the U.S. launched an attack against Iraq to topple dictator Saddam Hussein from power. The attack commenced with aerial strikes against military sites, followed the next day by an invasion of southern Iraq by U.S. and British ground troops. Troops made rapid progress northward and conquered the country's capital, Baghdad, just 21 days later, ending Saddam.
Hell yeah. I was in Baghdad when they hung Saddam in the courthouse.
Wow.
Yeah, that's there was supposedly not supposed to be any news coverage or anything. They weren't going to televise it. But of course, somebody had a cell phone. Yep, we had cell phones back in 2003.
Yeah,
And
we had the razor back then.
yeah,
didn't have
but
didn't have much else.
there was a cell phone video release supposedly that's what it was. It was definitely a video release of someone hanging literally in a stairwell of the courthouse, and supposedly that was Saddam's video.
Right. It I know a lot of men, a lot of women who served in Iraq over the last years. Um, and that would be this year. It would be 20 years since shock and awe.
Yep.
So very very meaningful date for a lot of men in service right now. Some of them still serving after being there for that.
March 31st, 2004. 4 Blackwater Security Counseling employees are ambushed and murdered in Fallujah, Iraq. The 4 armed contractors, Scott Helvinston, Jerko Zovko, Wesley Batalona, and Michael Teague, were dragged from their cars, beaten, and set ablaze. Photos of the horrendous crimes were released to the news agencies worldwide, causing indignation and outrage in the United States and other countries. I remember that very distinctly.
Yep. Yeah. My cousin actually turned down a Blackwater when he separated.
Probably a smart choice looking back.
Well, there you go. That is the month of March in history. Going forward, these segments will be much shorter because we'll be covering the week that we are in rather than the whole month. But we wanted to give you guys some interesting stuff to think about that's happened over the past centuries. Cowboy
Well,
Cody,
and a lot of it leads into the stuff that we talked about. You know, like we went over a couple weeks ago. We talked about the Constitution. We did Article 1 and 2 of the Constitution, about Congress and their rights. You know, and this is going back to where some of that stuff started. And then we always talk about, like we just talked about, the 20th anniversary of the Iraq War, Vietnam 50th anniversary. Like, it's just, you can see how all these events from anywhere from 20 years ago to 150 years ago are still tying in to what's going on with our country today.
Right. Exactly right. Okay, well, we are up against, we're right at the top of the hour, so we are right on schedule. We're up against some new segments. Well, not new to us, but this show. I do not have any upcoming events this week.
I actually had a website link copied, and when the power went out the other day on me, it shut my internet and everything down, so I don't have the link anymore. But the VA, check the VA. Solid Band's got a link to the VA ready to go, I'm sure.
Okay. Yep. Look at that.
They do upcoming events. It's an easy website to navigate. Get on there and you can check out upcoming events. You type in your zip code or whatever in your area if you don't have your location turned on. I don't because I'm paranoid. But and you can see what's in your area. Anything, if you're a veteran or in the military, stuff you can do. There's always we call it job fairs. That's what
Yep.
There's always job fairs. There's always veteran connectivity events, just where it could be like a Zoom meeting or something where you get together. What's the Agent Orange thing we've been talking about? PACT Act.
Yep, the PACT Act.
There is a big virtual event coming up for the PACT Act. There has been, it got passed November of last year, right? Is when that got signed in.
Right.
I was reading on it. I think there's already been 300,000, I think is the number, submissions for either alteration or initial submissions from veterans that have been suffered exposure. So, but anyways, yeah, get in the VA there, and there's a bunch of upcoming events for your area, I'm sure.
Right.
Civilians get involved too. Like, you can go to the VA and you can look at upcoming events, and they're always looking for volunteers, for people to help hand out pamphlets or welcome people in, or give people name tags at events. All types of stuff you can get involved in.
Right. Well, we're up to our veteran spotlight. Why don't you tell us about Sergeant Jeremy Miller?
This guy, he's one of my absolute best friends from overseas. We were deployed to Iraq. I was 18. He was 19, I believe. He was a year older. Didn't act like it, but me and him spent almost every day together. We shared a Humvee together. We did foot patrols together, everything. But he's a very dark-skinned man. I mean, he says he's white, but he looks like Cuban or something. I don't know. But the thing that always sticks out to me the best, I got a picture of him. We always threw the Iraqi kids anything we had, from MREs to pens and pencils to candy our family had sent us, anything. And one day we stopped for a little security patrol, and he jumps out of the Humvee, and I was I was jumping out of the Humvee having a cigarette, and all the Iraqi kids encircled him, and they thought he was Iraqi because he's so dark. And so they're all around him chanting like soccer chants. They're going, Iraqi, Iraqi, Iraqi. Oh my God. So to this day, like, sad note, we had to go to a funeral together recently. One of our friends died. But the second I saw him, I started chanting Iraqi. He's like, fuck you, But yeah, he's a good dude, super immature, just like me. He was one of my best friends. We got a lot of shit together over there. He's a part owner in a storage unit company, and he's doing very, very well for himself. He can tell you about himself in this video, but very, very good dude. Just a regular dude got put in a spot,
So enjoy this veteran spotlight video, followed by a spotlight on one of our national parks, and we'll tell you about that when we come back.
Hey guys, my name is Jeremy Miller. Served in the Illinois Army National Guard for a little over 6 years. Deployed once to Iraq 05 to 06. Still reside in Illinois. Work for a company called All States Ag Parts, and also run a self-storage business with my business partner. Married for almost 12 years now. 2 kids, a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old that keep us very busy. Hope everyone has a good day out there.
People are drawn to water, and there is so much water in Yellowstone. Even though we are kind of in a high desert environment, it is everywhere. So rivers, lakes, hundreds of waterfalls, and then the big things that people really come to see, geysers and hot springs. It can be solid or gas. It can flow very quietly and slowly. It can be loud and roaring and raging and fast. And then you have Yellowstone Lake, which is like an ocean in the middle of our continent. The variety of water we have here, I think it really makes Yellowstone pretty special.
Fishing is obviously a really, really popular thing in Yellowstone, and people come and fish these rivers, both because they're beautiful rivers to fish, but they're cold waters fed by mountain snows, and they contain native trout that depend on cold, oxygen-rich water. Yellowstone is a stronghold for native Yellowstone cutthroat trout. But Yellowstone is a stronghold for lots of aquatic organisms, not just trout, but 4 species of native amphibians that are widespread throughout this place. Water is important for loons that are uncommon in this region. We know that beaver and moose, we know that grizzly bears, we know that elk, we know that bison all use shallow surface water habitats on a regular basis.
I was drawn to work with water because I come from the desert where it's sparse and there's very little of it. And so you really notice just the magnetic nature of water, how dependent life is to it, and how much it's drawn to being toward water. Yesterday we were working on a special project that was related to a mine cleanup outside of Yellowstone National Park. So I was helping to collect water samples and do water chemistry measurements to see how the cleanup was affecting water quality running into the park.
Yesterday we were working on Soda Butte Creek, which is a really interesting tributary that comes into the park at its northeast boundary. Soda Butte Creek was at one time one of the most contaminated rivers entering a national park in the U.S. And an interesting reclamation project spearheaded by a collaboration between the Montana Department of Environmental Quality and the National Park Service led to a cleanup effort that removed toxins that had the potential to enter Yellowstone National Park. That cleanup was successful, and we've been working on a water quality project that demonstrates that conditions in Soda Butte Creek that flows into the Lamar River and ultimately the Yellowstone River have been cleaned.
Water is life, and water really drives the system. That's definitely something of interest for our scientists because with climate change, water patterns may change. Snow and rain patterns may change.
In the Rockies, we store most of our water as snow. It's delivered all winter long and then released slowly through the early summer. So changes in snowpack will lead to changes in water storage and therefore changes in river flows. Freshwater habitats, and in particular shallow wetlands and ponds, are things that are the most vulnerable to a changing climate. And so we should do everything we can to both understand but protect remaining habitats.
Those healthy rivers that are flowing out of the park are also providing a great resource downstream for everything from farmers and ranches, cities, towns. You know, we need water. And so having these healthy waterways in a national park is actually providing a lot for the folks downstream. It's kind of fun when you're by a river in Yellowstone to think about the journey that that water will take, where it has been, where it has come from, and where it will go.
And we're back. So I hope you enjoyed that spotlight on Yellowstone National Park. Patriotic, why don't you tell us what we've been talking about together about the national parks for the last week?
Well, it all started, what, I think 2 weeks ago whenever we did the House bill, or it was a House resolution, excuse me, that was, I should have kept my notes out, that was introduced to Congress. That really long name, like the, I don't have my notes.
Yeah, it was
Whatever.
really long.
The one that allows, what's up, American Pride Gaming? Thanks for checking in, brother.
Hey, brother.
It was the one that is going to allow, if it gets passed, firefighters and first responders free access to the national parks, just like right now our current active duty military have free access. Whatever that bill name was, I forget off the top of my head. It was really long, but that kind of got me sparked into looking at national parks. I love national parks. Like, I'm sure everybody who's ever been to one loves national parks. And so I got onto the National Park Services YouTube, was able to get in contact with them. I asked if we could use their videos, and it's, as long as we don't monetize our stream, basically as long as we're not making money off of their video somehow, you know, doing advertisement or whatever, then we can use it. So Cowboy was looking at a bunch of different ones. We were wanted to show one this week, and we came up with the idea kind of collectively that what if we just do it every week? Find a little 5-minute video, outlining a part of a big national park. Like that was just like the waters of Yellowstone, I think is what that was called, right? So I mean, obviously there's going to be one about the geysers, one about the buffalo and the whatever. But so every week we're going to add in to a part of our intermission. I guess that's what we call that little thing that just happened, an intermission. We're going to do we're going to do a national park weekly video. There's 63 national parks, I think is the accurate number at the time, 63. So, and that does include, all the other stuff that bill will give firefighters and first responders access to, including, the Army Corps of Engineer lands, war reclamation lands, all that stuff. So we're gonna find more. I mean, we're probably gonna have a couple of years worth of content there.
Yeah, I think so. So you've got in our notes here that you need to tell a deer attack story. Now I'm interested in hearing this, and I'm wondering if it's anything like the videos I've seen on YouTube where guys go out and hose themselves down with doe urine. Wonder why they get run the hell over.
So I went on vacation, and let me see.
Solid said let her grab her popcorn.
I would have been 12. So however many years ago 12 is, 24 years ago. So 1999-ish. Does that sound right?
About then.
Went on vacation. Went out west and went to Colorado and Utah. And went down to Arizona, New Mexico, and did the Four Corners thing. I was in 4 states at the same time. Hiked the Grand Canyon, bunch of cool stuff. My dad took me out there, and on the way back, all right, I gotta tell a little bit of a backstory, I guess. My mom and dad weren't never married, didn't live together, nothing. So I went on vacation with dad out west, and in the meantime, my mom went up to Wisconsin on a fishing trip. So whenever me and dad's vacation got over in Colorado, we had to drive back to Wisconsin to drop me off, right? So as we were leaving Colorado, he decided we'll just go north and take go basically head straight east instead of going northeast the whole time. So we went up north and caught the bottom edge of Yellowstone, and they've got I thought they were reindeer. Like I said, I was a kid. Really, they were I think probably just whitetail or mule deer. I don't know what, but they were in shed, so they had the velvet antlers.
Right.
Or they had in velvet. They had the velvet antlers. So I thought they were reindeer, which was pretty cool. And it could have been a reindeer, pardon language. So we stop and we get out of the car and we're looking at these deer or whatever, and this one buck walks up to me, just comes strolling up. I'm like, oh, cool. Dad's like, hey, give him some peanuts. We had some honey roasted peanuts, right? Planters, honey roasted peanuts. So I put some in my hand, stick it out. Sure enough, little dude walks all the way up to me. He's a small deer. I'd say he's like 2-year-old. He wasn't full grown yet, but big. 100 pounds, 120 pounds probably at least. But feeding this dude some peanuts, and then all of a sudden a doe walks out of the forest. She's like, oh, he's getting some peanuts. I want some peanuts. So she walks over, and I'm like, I turned my back to him, poured some peanuts in my hand, and went to hand the peanuts to her, and this dude rears back on his rear eggs and starts Muhammad Ali in my back. Like he was walked a mud hole in me and walked it dry.
Stomp mud hole and walk it dry. That's funny.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, dude, he pulled a wheelie and just, I'm for real, stood on his hind legs and just. I didn't know what the hell was going on. It didn't hurt or nothing. Like I didn't get hurt, but I didn't know deer would attack a human.
Oh yeah,
sure enough, they will.
There's a guy in Arkansas about 4 years ago during bow season shot an 8 buck and trailed it, and they found him bored to death in the woods. Apparently he didn't wait long enough, and the deer wasn't quite dead when he got to it, or it was a bad shot. Don't really know. They found the deer a short distance away, but the deer actually managed to get up as he approached, knock him down, and trample him and gore him. And they said that the trampling and the goring wasn't the actual cause of death. The man died from a heart attack, but there was evidence that the deer beat the mess out of him before he died, so I'm sure that contributed.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to take this next segment? This one is interesting. I've got the article pulled up, glancing through it, but man, it's.
Yeah, this is a cool one.
Jorge
if you guys are following along in the document, I have clicked something that's not what I wanted to click. All right, whatever. I'm on the wrong screen, but I'll read it anyways. So click on the link in the document. It was borderline plagiarism if I was gonna type stuff into our document there. So I just put the link in there because it's a long story, but it's awesome. For those of you who don't know, my family is Puerto Rican, so the Puerto Rican Rainbow title caught my attention. So I wanted to touch on the old Puerto Rican Rainbow guy. It says here.
My family has some Puerto Rican roots as well. Emilio Cross. His father is full blood Puerto Rican, married into mine.
Nice. I don't even know how to say this guy's name.
Jorge.
Eloy?
Eloy.
Yeah, his parents.
Leroy.
Eloy. It might be. But so his parents welcomed his son to the world on April 17, 1937 in the small municipality of Vega Baja, Puerto Rico. And that is actually my family's name is Vega. So I don't know where they're from, but anyways, it's west of the capital San Juan. They gave him the name. Does it even say his name yet?
Jorge is it? It says it in that next.
Oh yeah. When they gave him a name inspired by his father's admiration for America's first president, the family certainly had no inkling that little Jorge, that's George, would one day be something of an American icon in his own right, a status earned after becoming one of the most decorated soldiers in the Vietnam War. Jorge Otero Barreto joined the Army in 1959 after pursuing biology studies in college. 1 year later, he made history of becoming the first Puerto Rican to ever graduate from the Army's Air Assault School. So that's pretty cool, right?
That's pretty cool.
A little time elapsed before Otero Barreto volunteered to go to Vietnam. In 1961, he embarked on his first deployment, one of such 5 tours he would make in the embattled nation between 1961 and 1970 as a member of the 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, and 25th ID, among others.
Great.
Over the course of 5 deployments, Jorge volunteered for approximately 200 combat missions, a lofty number that eventually earned him the moniker the Puerto Rican Rambo, after the fictional death-dealing character made famous by Sylvester Stallone.
Wow.
He would earn 38 total commendations during the 5 combat tours, including 3 Silver Stars, 5 Purple Hearts, 5 Bronze Stars, and 5 Air Medals, and 4 Army Commendation Medals. That's crazy.
This is not somebody you want to mess with in a bar fight.
And American Pride, I don't know if you're still in chat or not, but if you are, you'll understand what I'm saying when I get ready to say this. Silver Stars in Vietnam, Silver Stars in World War II, the Korean War, they're not what Silver Stars are now. Right now, pretty much, if you're an officer in the Army, you get a Silver Star. You can write yourself up for a Silver Star at the end of your damn tour. Well, actually, your commander has to do it, but they give out Silver Stars and Bronze Stars. I did 2 deployments, one to Iraq, one to Afghanistan. Every commander got a Silver Star. Every platoon leader got a Bronze Star. Just the way it was, just for going there.
Right.
This dude earned his, I promise.
Well, not only that, he earned them in the 1960s as a minority soldier.
Right.
You know, that's a big deal. 3 Silver Stars as a minority group soldier. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. 5 Purple Hearts. So that's 5 injuries sustained in direct combat with the enemy. It's crazy. I wonder what he got the air medals for.
Flying? I don't know. That's well, he was airborne, so it probably has to do with jumping.
Oh yeah, probably air assault missions.
Air assault missions.
Yeah.
Well,
that's cool. One particular award was the result of actions on May 1st, 1968, when the platoon sergeant, along with men from the 101st Air Cavalry Division, nestled into positions designed to pin down a North Vietnamese regiment in a village near the deadly city of Hue. That's pronounced Hue, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, American Pride. Do you agree with what I'm saying about the Bronze Stars and stuff for our military leaders? Pretty much hand them out like candy now. In the early morning hours. Right. Yeah. Yes, he agrees with what I'm saying. Yeah, this dude, like Cowboy said, definitely being a minority in the first Puerto Rican air assault guy, he definitely earned every medal on his chest, 38 of them. In the early morning hours, Jorge and his men came under heavy bombardment and was faced waves of charging enemy soldiers, desperate to rid themselves of incoming Americans. U.S. troops managed to repel the first 2 enemy assaults, killing 58 in the process and forcing the assailants to limp back to the village. Instead of awaiting a third assault, Jorge opted to lead a counterattack, but shortly into their advance, the first platoon came under a barrage of machine guns, small arms, and rocket-propelled grenade fire from enemy spider holes and bunkers strewn across the platoon's fire sector. The Puerto Rican Rambo wasted no time getting to work. Jorge sprinted to the nearest machine gun bunker and quickly killed 3 men manning the position.
Wow.
Gathering the rest of his squad, he moved through 3 more fortified enemy bunkers, dashing from one to the next until all that remained was a trail of destruction. The assault by Jorge, which allowed the rest of Company Alpha's platoons to maneuver into advantageous positions and overrun the enemy, would earn him 1 of his 3 silver stars. Jorge, now 85, would later retire as a sergeant first class, and while the eventual conclusion of Vietnam would mark the end of his extensive combat career, it would not be the last of his many lifetime achievements. In 2006, Jorge was named the recipient of the National Puerto Rican Coalition's Lifetime Achievement Award. Since then, he has had veterans' homes and museums named in his honor, and in 2011 was recognized in his hometown when the city named the Puerto Rican Rambo its Citizen of the Year.
Pretty impressive.
There's a link in there for more of his medals and more of his stories and stuff, but that's the general overview. But
I bet if you asked him, though, he would tell you I'm a job.
I promise you his answer would be heroes come home in boxes.
That's right. Well, we have a very special video to show you guys next. We haven't done very many of these stream up to now, so it might take me a second to get everything just perfect, so bear with us. But we have a video that Patriotic showed to me first a couple of weeks ago. We got permission to use it, and I think it's a stellar look at military, especially in the aviation. So why don't you tell us a little about that?
I have not watched the whole video. I watched about the first 3 minutes of it, and I wanted to save it so I could watch it with you guys. So my reactions and comments, whatever, are going to be genuine and original.
Okay.
This is again, I got this video a couple weeks ago, leading into the 50th anniversary of Vietnam, the ending of Vietnam, and obviously it fit the bill of being pertinent to our stream. So it's basically an interview with a gentleman who was a door gunner for one of the Huey helicopters in Vietnam. He's RAAF, is Royal Australian Air Force, so he's a RAAF officer of some sort. This is it. We'll watch it together, and I don't really know exactly what he's going to say or what's going to happen.
Let me see if I can.
We do have permission from the Royal Australian Air Force to use this video on the stipulation that we link its source. So when you guys, if you want to go back and watch whatever, go to their website and watch it. Don't watch it on our stream.
If I can make it work down.
Oh, there's Cowboy. What up, fella?
What I don't remember is just how big or just where videos show up below us in the scene. Do you remember that? Okay.
Yep, it's down and centered of us, and then the alert boxes and all that should have been moved to the left side already for the video.
Property.
Actually, I think we turned alert boxes off for the stream, didn't we?
I think we did turn the noise off. All right, so let's just put this in. Copy. Paste. I should have thought that was, and I did not. So that's actually. All right, so here we go.
Well, we used to have a producer, if you believe it or not. You should be able to put that full screen down. I think
except that
66 to 1972, I was an airfield defence guard.
All right.
I had my first experience of Iroquois helicopters at Fairburn Air Force Base, being what they called a teabag.
Let's do. We're gonna go. We'll be off cam, but we will be commenting throughout the video. We're gonna go to full screen video. So what that does is it puts the page in there, but it doesn't actually open the page in my browser.
Oh.
Yeah, so I can't make it full screen.
Do a browser source. That'll only take you 13 seconds.
Actually, yeah, I could do that. Let's add.
I thought that's what you're doing, to be honest.
I just used the source we already had. Browser source. Add source.
I love these photographs. I want to know who painted that one I'm looking at. You know, I know a guy who can paint. I wonder if I can convince him to do something like that.
Nope, that is a browser source, and I can't click into it.
You should be able to. It doesn't open a page?
It doesn't open a page in my browser. It opens it inside that window. So we'll go to the break screen and go to a full screen video, and then go from there. Let's that.
Yeah, I was talking about opening an actual page and then.
66 to 1972, I was an airfield defence guard. I had my first experience of Iroquois helicopters at Fairburn Air Force Base, being what they called a teabag, winched up and down from the parade ground, and a few rides in helicopters while we were there. I went to Vietnam a couple of times, and my second trip in 1970-71, I spent as a door gunner. I volunteered, as quite a number of airfield defence guards had to become door gunners. And in fact, the helicopter beside me here, my second day of training as a door gunner, was on this very helicopter.
There we go.
And if you can picture it taking off from Newyddat with 15 people on board, we're quite literally getting ready to go, and we kept on getting people coming up, Americans and Australians. Where are you going? Where are you going? Oh, we're going here, we're going there, we're going everywhere. Oh, I'm going to this particular place. Can I get a lift? Yeah, climb on board. Now, of course, we were hooked up to the fuselage of the aircraft by what we called a monkey strap, big strap buckled around our waist and hooked up to the fuselage. And in fact, one of my mates on what we called a hash and trash, taking hot boxes of food out to a fire support base. On the way back, an empty hot box fell out. His skipper asked him to move forward and make sure nothing else fell out. Well, he fell out. So he's got his safety, his monkey strap on, hooked up to the fuselage, dangling below the skids, and took, I believe, the co-pilot, the crewman, and a passenger to drag him back up. And I'm told that he was quite visibly shaken and still trembling after a few beers in the Airmen's Club later on that day. It's strange that I have a great deal of difficulty climbing up ladders, yet I had no problem at all in sitting in a helicopter and doing the job. On one of the battalions returning home, I was the gunner on a chopper that did 27 trips to the ship from Newyddat. Load up with troops, fly out, drop them off, fly back to Newyddat, back forward. So that was a big day. I became qualified as a door gunner on gunships. When it came time to providing support to Army units that were in strife, if we were on the gunships, we would go out, we'd be getting indications of where to lay down our suppression fire. The pilots got very, very good at operating the Gatling machine guns and the rocket pods, and we would linger as long as we could while the guys were in strife, until such time as either fuel or ammunition forced us to go back. The Iroquois with 9 Squadron included, obviously, medevacs. I had one where we were hovering above the jungle. I was the gunner. Crewman was winching up a wounded patient from the combined Anzac company. The contact was still happening down below. What we as the crew didn't know as we were carrying on with our tasks was that a pair of American Cobra gunships had been authorised to come in and do firing passes. There were some very expletive deleted comments when they opened up with their rockets and machine guns. We didn't know what the devil was going. We were concentrating on what was happening. The medevac's landing pad at number 1 hospital at Bung Tau was named Vampire Pad. So if you were heading into Vampire Pad, they knew that you had some seriously wounded people on board. Some of them didn't make it, of course, but then, of course, the medevacs would happen with the C-130s taken to Butterworth and then back onto Australia and all that sort of stuff. One of the other tasks was a thing called sniffer. Aircraft rigged up like this. They had a meter box in the fuselage, pipes going out onto the skids. They would bring air into the machine. It could read the air and the components in it, and if there was smoke or sulphur, that might indicate an enemy camp. Another flight back from Newyddat as a gunner, within about 5 to 10 minutes or 5 minutes of Newyddat, we would disarm the guns. As I completed doing that, I looked up and there was a pair of South Vietnamese Sky Raider propeller-driven aircraft flying past the left of the aircraft, and the closest pilot to me had this huge grin on, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my heavens, if he'd been an enemy, I was gone. But he just smiled and waved. We did a lot of support to the SAS, amongst other things. Apparently they had some pretty good parties, although I never went to one, but quite a few of my mates did. I was the gunner on the helicopter that brought out the last SAS patrol, and when we picked them up, they'd been in water up to about their thighs for quite some time, clearing the area and making sure that everything was secure.
But that's fun.
If they got bumped, they wanted to be out of the area very, very quickly. They did have a very, very good working relationship with the squadron. Sadly, it was a member of the SAS. I'm not sure whether he was a signaller or a trooper, one of the 6 that was missing in action at the end of the Vietnam conflict. They'd been in strife. 9 Squadron helicopter had come across. They couldn't land, so they'd thrown ropes down, something the patrols had practiced many times. Hook onto the rope, and away you go. Unfortunately, with this gentleman, something went wrong. He fell about 60 metres, and he couldn't be recovered. It was about 17 years ago that an army team located his body along with the 3 other soldiers that were missing in action in Vietnam. My time with 9 Squadron was a little bit hectic. During the 6 months I was there, we lost at least 5 helicopters. One in which one of my mates on the same Airfield Defence Guard course was a crewman, and he was medevaced back to Australia, the skipper of that aircraft, and the gunner had been killed. The co-pilot stayed in Vietnam, although he'd been injured. He recovered and went back flying. It was a good time, but when those 2 aircraft got shot down, I started to wonder what the hell I was doing there. I did have subsequent interaction with Iroquois at one time up at Butterworth as a supplier. I donned the flight suit again for an air display up there and fired some blank rounds from the gun as the gunner. My mate Peter stayed with helicopters post-Vietnam. Sadly, in 1974 on a flood relief mission flying out of Ambley, he was on a helicopter that crashed somewhere out the other side of Warwick. He was killed instantly. The skipper of the aircraft, a gentleman named Reg Van Leuven, died in hospital the next day. I'd flown with both of them in Vietnam, and you know, you survive a war zone and come back and get killed in a peace mission. Oh, just sorry. The emblem. The emblem for the squadron goes back to its days as a virtually a naval cooperation squadron, and Albatross was the call sign for the slicks. So in Vietnam, so you might have a flight of 4, so 01, 02, 03, 04, that sort of stuff. Cool. That's it. I'm out of verve.
All right, what an interesting video.
Heck yeah, I like that guy.
That's pretty deep stuff. I apologize for the echo, guys. That's one of the downsides of producing and talking at the same time with limited resources on microphones and speakers, stuff like that. I was having to hear the video, but didn't realize you guys were getting the echo because my desktop audio was on, and if I turn that off, then you don't hear if Patriotic says something on stream. So we're still working out the kinks on that particular feature, but we will definitely get that nice for next time.
We're working on getting a producer.
All right, man, what an interesting story. I mean, these guys, just big brass ones. I mean, they must have had huge hollowed out spots under those seats.
Yeah, they were like chiropractor tables, like the head. That's how the seats looked on those.
Had to have.
That helicopter in there, I believe, wasn't that the actual helicopter he flew
I
in or something?
I believe in another episode he said that was the helicopter he took his training in.
Oh, I think that's what it was. Something we watched one with him that was talking about that helicopter. It had been they call that revamped, whatever, restored.
Right. Restored.
Yeah,
restoration.
That was that. Yeah, I think you're right. That was a helicopter that he trained in.
All right, this next topic is one that is of extreme importance to our veterans, and since you are a veteran who understands how this works, I'm going to let you go through this one and explain exactly what this is and why it's important.
Well, I just learned about this week because I knew I still got 4 years of college paid for it. I was like, well, maybe I'll go to college. I want to see about the VA paying for pilot's license maybe, and so I kind of started looking at that, and the colleges are telling me that, well, if you got out in 2009, you better hurry up because all your stuff's expiring every day. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I went to the VA website, and I pulled this straight from the VA website. This is 100% fact. Your GI Bill expires. If you were discharged before January 1st, 2013, your post 9/11 GI Bill benefits expire 15 years after you separated from the military. So 2010, that'd be 2025, they expire. So basically 2025 minus 4 years is 2021. So I can't use the 4 years of benefits anymore. Every day that I don't go to college, I'm throwing my benefits that I earned away. Your Montgomery GI Bill benefits expire 10 years after you separate from the military. Basically the way that works, there's two different types of benefits we were eligible for whenever we enlisted. The post 9/11 is the newer one. They revamped that in, I'm trying to think, maybe I feel like 2018 or 19, maybe 17 or 18. I don't know, somewhere around in there. They revamped it. Came up with a whole new system and everything. It's more beneficial to use the post 9/11 GI Bill for most veterans than it is the Montgomery GI Bill. That's the original one. But either way, they both expire. Montgomery GI Bill's 10 years after your separation, so that's all gone for me. If I ever wanted to use it, I couldn't anymore. Some people can get an extension, but it's not hopeful. You may qualify for an extension if one of these is true. You served a later period of active duty of 90 consecutive days. You have an illness or a disability that prevented you from attending school, or you were held by a foreign government or foreign power after your last discharge. So basically, if you served after your service, which doesn't make any sense, you can extend your GI Bill for that much longer, which I guess that's not super helpful. I think that's a clause they put in there to cover their ass is how I feel about it.
I think that would be there for like guys who served active duty and then came home for a year or two and they're like, okay, I missed military life, so they went back to the National Guard or something like that. Would that apply?
Yeah, but you'd have to do 90 consecutive days. That's it. Yeah, National Guard and Reserves would apply if you were deployed again, but then if you're deployed again, you're back to active duty. You get put on active duty status for deployment. So
maybe the reverse, somebody who did the National Guard and then went active duty a year later.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, if you earned a Montgomery GI Bill in National Guard and then signed up for active duty, they're saying that your date would change with your service, but that's common sense to me. Like I said, I just as an angry person who's realizing that the shit I earned is expiring every day, I think this is just them trying to cover their own ass. Or if you have an illness or disability that prevented you from attending school, well, come on. You know whatever illness or disability you have, they're probably going to tell you doesn't qualify.
Or doesn't exist.
Or if you're a POW. But if you're a POW, you're on active duty until you're recovered. So I don't really understand it.
After your last discharge, so maybe if you were back in country on a civilian visa and got arrested.
I don't have a clue. Maybe.
That's interesting verbiage.
It just seems like they're trying to weasel their way out. Like, why would my college be good forever? I just don't understand. I guess I assumed that I earned it, that I got to keep it. I didn't know they were going to take it back,
Right. I guess it's like a check. You got to cash it within a certain amount of time it's been written.
Yep, I guess so. I know we covered handing your benefits down to your dependents. Do you remember the clause of that?
Right, that you had to have served 10 years. I don't remember all of it, but I remember you said you had to have served 10 years.
You have to agree to serve 4 more years.
That's right. You had to agree to an additional 4-year contract.
So like now I'm encroaching 40 years old here, And if I wanted to hand the benefits that I earned down to my kid, I would have to enlist for 4 more years. It's just that type of shit pisses me off. I'm getting heated thinking about it. Like,
Right.
I just don't understand why the stuff that we earned would be good forever. Tom, you spelled "your" wrong.
Grammar police, get him. Well, we're up on our constitutional section of the show, and this week's section of the Constitution is not very long. It covers presidential duties. It's Article 2, Section 2, and it says the president shall be the commander in chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia or National Guard, as we've already discussed, of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate to make treaties, provided two-thirds of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of department. The President shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. So this covers quite a wide gamut of presidential duties and power.
Hell yeah, it does.
He's in charge of the military and of the militia of the several states. I do like the fact that it adds the clause behind militia, which we discussed relates to the National Guard. It says when called into the actual service of the United States. So in other words, the National Guard in each state is at that state's governor's command until such time as the United States requires the National Guard unit to be mobilized for a national emergency. And then says that he may require the opinion in writing from the principal officers of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their offices. Also goes over his ability to grant reprieves and pardons in cases other than so if a senator or a vice president or someone was impeached, he would not be able to pardon that person should they be convicted. Let's see. He has the ability to make treaties, provided two-thirds of the present senators concur. Now, that does not state that there has to be a majority of the senators present. So I wonder if that means, suppose President whoever meets with 5 senators, and the 5 senators agree that he should make a treaty with somebody. Does that count? I wonder how that works. That's interesting because it doesn't state that a quorum or a majority of the senators even have to be present at that meeting. That
It says 2/3 of the Senate present concur.
right. So 2/3 of the senators who are present in the meeting,
I would
or
imagine,
maybe the present session of senators.
So, I'm sure we're gonna find out later, maybe Section 3 or I don't know, but I know the president can call a special session, right?
Right.
So we would assume that I would assume that this would have to be a special session. So I don't know, not every senator can come back and report for a special session if they're not in session already. So either they're in session already and 2/3 have to agree, or if he calls for a special session, then 2/3 of who showed up would have to agree.
Right.
That's kind of the way I read it.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a backdoor private meeting.
Yeah, I don't think he's at an AA meeting with senators calling treaties.
It says he has the ability to nominate and appoint upon approval, of course, from the Senate, He can appoint ambassadors, other public ministers, councils, Supreme Court justices, and other officers of the United States. And then it goes on to say whose appointments are not here and otherwise provided for. In other words, in the Constitution, there are certain offices that the way that those offices are selected and appointed is already provided for, and that has to
Yep.
be taken care of according to that. And then it also includes all future offices that are created by saying which shall
Right.
be established by law. Again, this document was designed to go forward in the future from where they were at. They knew things would change over time, and they designed this document in such a way that it could still be used to govern the country 200 years later.
It's amazing how smart and open-ended they are with their, whenever they're writing all this stuff down, like
Right.
knowing that we don't know everything. There's going to be more officers. Technology is going to advance, and people are going to advance. Civilization is going to advance. The government's going to advance. Country's going to expand, and they allowed for all, for the offices that they don't even know about yet to be outlined in here.
Right. Well, some people look at the Constitution as kind of a fence around the United States, and everything has to be inside that fence. Other people look at the Constitution as if it was a wide open field that can be written on and changed and done however it needs to be done in order for it to meet somebody's narrative. But I think in truth, the most the most relevant idea would be that of a cattle chute, that it points in a certain direction, but there are gates and balances along the way to keep everything moving, but at the same time, it has the ability to change course and still reach its destination, which is a free country and a freed people that have a government that works for them. And
Really well thought out and defined Constitution, man. That's
is
pretty incredible.
it was very well thought out. And that is our constitutional section for the week. We promised that they would be shorter going forward. So there you go. Look at a brief look at the presidential duties, ranging from commander in chief of the military all the way to appointment of Supreme Court justices. Interesting. And next up, news of the week. The first news item we have is a sad story that hits pretty close to home. We had a school shooting in Nashville this week with multiple victims, some as young as 9 years old. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding that shooting. Apparently, it was a transgender female who went into a private Christian school and opened fire. Um, she only recently decided to take on the use of male pronouns. A former art professor from where she went to college says that there was evidence on social media posts that the shooter was troubled and that there was something going on, but Nashville police state that there's no evidence of trouble in Hale's life or in her home. Uh, 7 weapons were purchased legally over the last 7 years, some of them locally in Nashville, but her parents had no idea that she even owned them. They were apparently hidden from her parents. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. I will say that the school did a stellar job of protecting their people. All of the teachers had been put through an active shooter training program and had been trained on how to position their children in the classrooms, how to fortify doors securely and position them out of harm's way. And they said that the people who were victims were all caught in open common areas such as hallways and not in the classroom. That even though the shooter attempted to fire shots in some of the classrooms, no one was actually hit in the classroom. So I think that's a stellar job of a school preparing its staff and student body for such a situation. Yes, we have 6 victims, and that's heartbreaking, but it could have been much, much worse. I mean, I think most of us are old enough to remember Columbine. Um,
You know,
Heartbreaking. So,
so I I'm ignorant on this fact. Um, what does transgender female mean? Does that mean it's a boy that's now a girl, or a girl that's now a boy?
no, she's a female who recently decided to start using male pronouns. She had put up a post on
Okay.
social media saying she preferred to be called he and him. I was confused on that as well because at first I thought it was the reverse of that because that's the one we hear the most of, when it comes to stories
Yeah.
about transgenderism. It's usually males wanting to become females, Bruce Jenner, etc. But she apparently decided recently that she wanted to be known as a man. And Nashville police chief stated that there was no evidence of trouble in her life, but former professor says that there was evidence on social media that she was troubled and that she had something going on. That there was, I believe, one
Well,
of her former
gender
basketball
dysphoria
team.
is a
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, yeah, that's a thing. I believe one of her former basketball teammates from an all-girls basketball team had recently died, and she was struggling with that. I don't know the details on that death, but there was a lot of things going on in the background that led up to that. You don't just wake up one morning and go, "I'm going to go shoot up a middle school or an elementary school." That's just not how that
Well,
works.
I wonder with the transgender thing if are we calling it her she? I don't.
I'd say she. That's honestly that's what all the
Whatever.
papers are saying.
I'm gonna call it Hale. I'm gonna call it Hale.
Hale works.
So I wonder if Hale, during the transition, was taking drugs. Hormones, hormone blockers, all that type of stuff.
I don't believe she was actually in the transition phase, but she may have already been on the drugs. On drugs that hadn't been released
those
yet.
obviously don't have extensive testing and uses. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and it's not like they could possibly have dangerous side effects. I mean,
knows?
you're playing with your body's chemistry. One of the biggest things that
True.
I believe affects mental health is chemical imbalances. So why would we start playing with chemical imbalances?
One of our viewers says that she had sent messages to someone, not sure how long before she attacked the school, but there was someone that didn't report her as a possible risk to herself or others.
Right.
So there were signs supposedly.
So there's still facts coming out on this.
Of course, and there will be, and this is one of the things we always talk about with the media too. We have to be careful what we watch, what we listen to, and what we count as fact. Either way, it's a terrible situation.
The thing that flew all over me about this is the same day that this happened, as soon as news got out, we had senators and congressmen and people all over the country calling for, we need stricter gun control. We need more gun control. So how about we find out what the problem was that caused this and then ban that problem?
Playing devil's advocate, that goes both ways. First of all these weapons were purchased legally, right? But they were used illegally. So the laws we have in place, were already followed, but not enforced, basically, because she wasn't using, or whatever, Hale wasn't using these weapons in a legal manner. So she was not a legal gun owner at that point in time. If you're using your tools illegally, you're not legal. It's simple as that.
That's exactly
right.
The
second thing goes, as soon as a liberal politician comes out and says, see, this is why we need gun control. Sure as shit, the NRA's got the next commercial saying, see, this is why we need to arm everybody. Like, it's all a game between all the elitists of our country, and it's disgusting.
It just made me angry that they turned an issue like this, with 6 families grieving the loss of their children and loved ones, into a political football to kick back and forth across the aisle. That should have never happened. It should have never become a political football. You want to talk about gun control? Let's talk about gun control. Let's not bring up an incident that happened 3 hours ago where some of the families haven't even been fully notified yet, and start talking about gun control. Let's not do that. Let's be respectful.
It's sad and disgusting, in my opinion. Events like this, and this was a small event. I'm not trying to make light of 6 children dying, okay? But I'm saying in the 360 million people we have in America, this is not the biggest event we've had in our history involving firearms. But something like this, I don't know why our politicians can't sit around the table and instead of saying, being extremists about it, saying either no guns or arm everybody. Like, can't we have an actual conversation about how do we prevent this from happening?
Right.
Like, the conversation shouldn't be about firearms. The conversation should be about
the root cause.
Why are people going into schools shooting people? Like, why does that person have the mental capacity to think that that's normal, or whatever I'm trying to say? You know what I mean? Like, obviously there was mental problems, because that's not a normal thing. How many mental institutions in your state are still active? I know there's like 3 left in my state.
Right.
30 years ago there was 52. I don't know. They're politicizing everything, and they need to be working together on a solution instead of pointing a finger.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And this bit of news, I'm going to let you cover this one. This is a sad bit of news as well. This is the second incident of this in about 3 weeks.
Yep. Black Hawk helicopter accident. outside of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Two 101st Airborne Black Hawk helicopters crashed, leaving nine service members dead. Most of the details are being held back until all the families can be notified, which has been done. They've now released a list of names, and they're going to open an investigation. These are brothers and sisters. These are the brothers and sisters of Charlie Company, 6 of the 101st Airborne who are lost. Please pay your respects and take a moment of silence while I read their names. Chief Warrant Officer 2, Zachary Esparza of Jackson, Missouri. Warrant Officer 1, Jeffrey Barnes of Milton, Florida. Chief Warrant Officer 2, Rustin Smith of Rolla, Missouri. Warrant Officer 1, Aaron Healy of Cape Coral, Florida. Staff Sergeant Joshua Gore of Morehead City, North Carolina. Staff Sergeant Taylor Mitchell of Mountain Brook, Alabama. Sergeant David Salinas Jr. of Oradell, New Jersey. Sergeant Isaac John Gayo of Los Angeles, California. And Corporal Emily Marie Eve Alanos of Austin, Texas.
Bad news. Bad news. We had a Black Hawk from Tennessee National Guard go down about 3 weeks ago, I think, Alabama, on approach to Huntsville. Crashed and killed everyone. That's a couple major incidents. Aviation side of the Army.
Yeah, it's unfortunately stuff like that happens, and
It does.
It's the price that our service members pay for good quality training. And from my understanding, they're flying in blackout mode, which means probably using some sort of night vision equipment with zero lights on their helicopter. And I don't know any details. They have not released anything. There's been a couple of eyewitness accounts saying, they saw two Blackhawks flying next to each other, and then I heard two booms, but there's zero details out on this, so I'm not going to assume anything. But when we talk about service members signing the dotted line, right? You sign that contract for your life.
Yep.
This is part of it. This is a realism of service. You don't have to be deployed. You don't have to be a combat veteran or have a combat instruments badge to be appreciated, to be lost. They gave their life for the service of their country. Granted, like I said, it wasn't in contact with the enemy, but these 9 people all dedicated and donated their life to America.
True. There's no guarantee that you die in combat. Things happen on training missions. Things happen on base. I know of a story of one man who went to Iraq, came back to his home in Atlanta, Georgia, after 2 tours in Iraq. His wife came to pick him up in the airport, and on the way she got a phone call that their house was on fire and burning down. She picked him up, and just a couple minutes later, she was waiting for him when she got the call. They were rushing back to get back to the house, were involved in a car accident, and I don't remember if he was killed or if the rest of his family was killed. I believe he lost his family in the car accident, and was severely injured in the car wreck, but he might have been killed as well. But I mean, it's all rough. It's hard. And when these young men and women sign that dotted line saying that they will go and they will serve, that's a commitment that we hope that they don't have to pay the highest price, but they're willing to. And those of us who have not served should be willing to pay them the ultimate respect for what they have done.
Yep.
And speaking of respect, this next story, a little bit more of a feel-good story to an extent. You and I are both familiar with the American Legion, and Virginia Legionnaire has legacy continued one final time. Hugh Cahill served as commander of Colonial Heights Post 284 in the 1980s, and he passed away in February. But thanks to the efforts of Post 284's American Legion family member, Cahill was able to make a difference in another veteran's life one final time after he passed. In late February, Legion family members got together to disassemble the wheelchair ramp into Cahill's house and transport it to and reassemble it at the home of fellow Post member Steve Garcia, who suffered a stroke months ago and could not yet walk. This was part of Mr. Cahill's legacy, said Bill Fiesenmeyer, Post 284 commander and past Department of Virginia commander. While he was gone, he would have wanted that to happen, pass it on. That's what he always did. He was a faithful volunteer for years and years, and it was his final contribution to helping veterans, which he always wanted to do. Fiesemeyer said he learned via being friends on Facebook with Garcia's wife Dee, whom Fiesemeyer went to high school with, that Steve had been hospitalized. But I didn't know it was serious, he said. He was actually on our delinquent list, so I sent him an email to check on him. I got an email from Dee, and she said, Bill, he's actually not doing well. He's had a stroke and he's in rehab, and we might be needing some equipment like a wheelchair, shower chair, something like that. When the time comes, does the post have anything like that? I said, yeah, we have that. Just let me know when the time comes and we can probably help you with that. In the meantime, Cahill's health was deteriorating, and Fiesemeyer frequently assisted the aging veteran with medical appointments and other errands, and he noticed that Cahill had a ramp that had been installed at his home recently. Within a day or so before Cahill passed, Fiesemeyer was contacted by Dee and said Steve was scheduled to come home February 23rd and asked if he knew of anywhere they could get a ramp. At Cahill's funeral, Fiesemeyer delivered the eulogy, and afterward he asked the family if they would mind if the ramp at Cahill's home went to the Garcias. They said yes, that is absolutely what he would want, for that ramp to be put to use for another veteran. Fiesemeyer said that's how that worked. I talked about it at a post meeting, said I didn't know when it would happen, but when it did, I was going to be looking for volunteers. When it came to that date, I asked for volunteers. We had Sons of the American Legion. We had Legion Riders. Everybody came, and we moved the ramp from Mr. Cahill's to Steve's house. It all just kind of fell into place so Steve could come home on time. And that is why we tell you guys, get involved with your local American Legion, even if you didn't serve in the military, because things like this happen every day all across the United States. The American Legion makes things like this possible. You don't have to be rich. You don't even have to be skilled. You just have to be willing to help. But
Absolutely.
definitely a feel-good story there, seeing a veteran come to another veteran's aid even after he had passed.
We got a new QR code up there today on the left.
Yep.
You all see it. It's the American Legion logo, and then that is a QR code to their home website. So if someone wants to scan that and go to the American Legion website, I would like to know if that link works, first of all. Second of all, that's where you can find out how you can help.
Absolutely. Grantler, welcome in.
You're the Sons of the American Legion, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm Sons of American Legion and American Legion Riders.
Cool.
So very cool. I've been able to assist with things like building handicap ramps at homes. I've helped repair fences for veterans. I have even been involved with building a handicapped ramp at a War Horses for Heroes location, which is a horse farm that brings disabled veterans out and helps them get to where they can ride a horse. I've seen guys who are paraplegic get up on a horse by using the ramp that we built and being lifted into place and be able to ride a horse, something they never thought they'd be able to do after they were put in a wheelchair. So very, very cool things happen to the American Legion. And speaking of the American Legion, why don't you tell us about the $6 billion they've got for disabled vets?
Fiscal year 2022 alone, veterans and other claimants represented by the American Legion received more than $16 billion in VA benefits compensation. In the same fiscal year, the Legion's Board of Veterans Appeals Unit represented more than 17,000 appellants, helping them to secure more than $66 million in retroactive VA claims. So that means claims that were either, like we talked about in all of our previous episodes probably, initially denied or given a lower rating than what should have done, they were able to claim $66 million in retroactive benefits. There's a link there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you look at the Google Docs document that's pinned up top there, you can read the whole story and see. But the Legion does a lot of good work for veterans. Good work through legislation. Good work through direct hand-in-hand work with the VA. Through just representation. You know, a lot of veterans don't know what to do, know what they're talking about, know what questions to ask, and the Legion has people who do know what to do and what questions to ask, and they're actively helping people. And that article outlines that.
Good article. Hey, what about this news from last year? I know this is an older article, But I think this is pretty interesting. Blue Angels
I didn't know
announced
it
the
happened.
first
I
female
just
jet
found it, and
pilot,
I'm like, man, that's cool. Yeah.
Lieutenant Amanda Lee.
Yep. There's a link in the Google Docs for that too if you want to read the whole story. But yeah, last year the Blue Angels got their first female jet pilot
It's pretty cool.
assigned to their force. Yeah.
And this is a topic that I've been looking forward to since we first discussed doing it. Different spins on the national anthem.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I feel the same way about the national anthem that I feel about Amazing Grace. It was written a certain way for a certain reason. It was meant to be sung a certain way for a certain reason because music is the universal language. You can listen to music, and even without any kind of words, a good musician can make an audience feel almost any emotion that they want them to feel: happy, sad, melancholy.
Well, it's art, right?
It's art.
Music's an art.
It's art, and it shouldn't be altered.
So whenever Michelangelo does a painting, you shouldn't take that painting and add to it and say this is better or worse.
Maybe put some clothes on it before you show it to your kids. But but no, I think in terms of the national anthem, if you want to remake a song by another artist and you contact that artist, Clint Black remade Desperado, by the Eagles, probably one of the best ballad remakes ever. But he went through the proper channels, contacted the people, that wrote the song and said, "Hey, I'd like to do this, and this is how I'd like to do it," and they approved it. Now I realize Francis Scott Key is not around anymore. The national anthem is not
Clint Black's
just
song represents Clint Black. It doesn't
right.
represent an entire nation.
Right. The national anthem is not just a song. The national anthem is a symbol of our nation, of our freedom, and it should carry the same message every time that it's sung. And that message should not be, "Look how good a performer I am." It should be, "Look how great a nation we are."
Have you ever heard Jim Corneliuson sing it?
I have not.
Well, next week I will have a video of him singing it for our streamers.
Perfect.
It is the most amazing and most impactful version I've heard him sing it 2 times in real life, and both times I literally had tears coming out of my eyes.
Right.
I went to a Blackhawks game, and he is the guy who sings the national anthem for the Blackhawks.
Right.
Every single game, every single home game, he sings it. And also I went to a NASCAR race up in Chicagoland a few years ago. They had him sing it there, and it is. I got chills thinking about it right now, for real.
Right.
Like my hair's on end. It is so amazing and carries so much impact when he sings it. It's powerful. That's what I look for. It's so powerful.
Now, don't get me wrong, either. I kind of have a different opinion than a lot of people on this because of the fact. So, if you've been invited to an event to perform the national anthem for that event, you are performing the national anthem for the purpose of reminding everybody at that event that they are patriots, that they are Americans. We are one. We are Americans. Doesn't matter our skin color, our gender, our sexual preferences, our religious preferences. We are Americans. That's what the point of it is. Now, if you want to record that song and make a recording, by all means, do what you want to do with it. You're not performing it for an event to remind people that they are Americans. For instance, Madison Rising recorded the national anthem, and it was very different from the original writing. I like that recording of it, but I used that recording in a live stream to bring in an event, and I later got to thinking about it. It's like, that's really not right. That's not how that should be done, because that moment, we're supposed to be solemn. We're supposed to be thinking about the United States of America, not tapping our foot.
Yep, I agree. I hate it flat out.
Yeah, I know you
against
don't. You don't like it.
I don't like when you mess. There's 2 things that genuinely irritate the shit out of me whenever they're messed with. One's the national anthem. I don't care if Britney Spears can hit 7 octaves higher than the song was wrote. It was wrote in a certain manner for a certain reason, and it represents all people of our country, all activities of our country from day one to now, right? And the future. Don't change it. And the other thing, obviously, is all you probably know: the American flag. It's a flag. It's not a poster. It's not a sticker. It's not a what do you call those things where people make them out of wood and paint them and then they burn them and stuff? like
Plaque.
the distressed flag things that people make out of like
Right.
pallets and stuff.
Right.
Like it's not a flag. The flag is a flag. It's a piece of cloth that's supposed to fly in the air. It's not supposed to be on a pallet. But anyways, I can talk about that that'll just get me angry too.
Right.
So let's move on to the next subject there. I see you got it highlighted there in our document.
I do. So I am looking into a new platform that we may be looking at branching out into, maybe possibly one day even migrating fully to. It's called Kick, KICK.com. It was founded a couple of years ago, or the idea was born a couple of years ago during COVID, when Twitch started cutting content creators because they did not like their views. And a lot of those creators who got cut were veterans. And so a group of people got together. They decided to launch their own streaming service that would be much better for the streamers. For instance, one of the things that they brought out was the fact that during COVID, Twitch grew astronomically in users and viewers. And during that time, they simultaneously cut the revenue stream going to their content creators. And that is bad business. Business is growing and it is getting bigger. That is not when you start taking income out of people's pockets who have helped grow it.
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of business sense,
It's
does it?
not. No, I mean, if you bought another truck and you hired a driver and that driver suddenly started bringing in all kinds of freight loads, are you going to cut his pay per mile? Well, no,
No.
because he's making you money. You're getting rich off of him. Well, Twitch decided to do that. So these guys said, hey, you know what? We're going to build a platform that is friendly to people, doesn't matter their political opinions or views. We're going to build a platform that's profitable for them. So on Twitch, I am an affiliate on Twitch on my other stream, and I believe Patriotic is as well.
I am.
Our subscriptions there, our ad revenue there, we get 50% of what comes in. So if we get a $5 subscription, we make $2.49 of that.
Yep.
On Kick, if we go to Kick and you do a $5 subscription, we make 95 cents out of every dollar in that $5. So Kick's revenue split is 95% to the streamer, 5% for Kick.
Now to clarify, Patriot View is not monetized.
No, Patriot View is not.
We're not making money off you guys. This
No.
is all just
This
sharing
is
feelings and opinions and
information share. So definitely take a look at
I'm a grouch.
take a look at kick.com. You will find a streamer on there called Big E, Bige. He is the CEO, and they're currently working on their app. They're waiting on Google Play Store to approve the app. It should be out within the next week. But a new platform, yet it is already growing very, very quick. So I'm looking into that. We're going to do some more research into it. I'm going to talk with some of the people that are behind the scenes. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot like Twitch. It feels like Twitch. It looks like Twitch. It functions like Twitch. But it definitely pays out better to content creators. So it's kinder to those of you who may stream and be affiliates here. You may find that you can actually bring home more money at Kick. But more so than that, it is a place where it doesn't matter what your political opinion is or what your personal opinion is. You're allowed to voice that opinion without fear of being censored or cut off the air, as long as you are not streaming copyrighted material.
I would like our viewers to get out there and see what Kick's about and see if we can move over there in the future. See what you guys think about it. If everybody thinks it's a good platform, I mean, we've got pretty much 10 to 15 people that check in on us every time we stream, and so if it's something we're considering, if everybody thinks it'll work, basically.
Yep, let us know what you think. Our first stream there will be a hot tub stream, so we're guaranteed to have viewers.
Eventually, Cowboy and I have discussed this in somewhat detail. Eventually, we would like to monetize the stream in some sort of fashion. We don't really know what, like strictly through donations or like a Patreon subscription type deal where you can do it $1 or $50 or whatever. But eventually we do want to get some sort of income, not only to pay for our subscriptions. We subscribe to like Discord Nitro and stuff, so we can share bigger files with each other. But we also want to use money to better our stream. We're both using these on sale $37 headsets and microphones. Like, I would like to have a nice microphone and some good audio equipment someday. I'm sure Cowboy probably would. Maybe get Cowboy a green screen so his right ear quits fading out. But and then if it ever gets to a point to where we're making $1,000 a month, you better believe we're donating that to the American Legion or some other charity, which obviously we would publish at the time. We're not trying to get rich or quit our jobs so we can hang out here with you guys. Although that'd be pretty cool if you'd support us.
I'd be down.
But yeah, so we are looking for Kick and looking through Kick, and we want to see if it's something that we could reasonably switch over to and keep 95% of the income, to use for our stream and also to donate to charities we see fit.
Right.
And if disclaimer, if we ever do monetize or when we ever do monetize, our financials will be 100% disclosed with you guys. We will not be getting rich off of any donations.
Right. Exactly. Next line. This one's important. We have a Facebook page. Check us out.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah. Got a link right there. Boom. Right in the chat.
Booyah. So that's cool. We'll be updating some content on the Facebook page in the near future. Also,
yep,
we do have an upcoming event. What do we got today?
Today we are going to be watching the NASCAR race together in Discord. I believe Salad Band has a Discord link she's going to paste for everybody who wants to come join the Discord. There it is. You can type in !race. There you go, and get the link for the watch party. It's a pretty cool thing that we've been doing for like a month now. We just get in there and hang out and watch the race together. Me and Cowboy do fantasy NASCAR, so we're always giving each other shit over whose driver sucks, who we want to spin out and wreck everybody else. But that's what we're going after this. So you guys are all welcome. We will send the stream over to a guy called Amused Hobbs. This is a veteran who's streaming Apex Legends right now. It's not a game I'm really into, but for anybody who wants to go watch Apex Legends, he'll be there. Anybody who wants to come hang out with us, we'll be in our Discord.
What a great show we had. We did a recap through history, special things that happened over the last several hundred years. We capped a lot of history today. And then we took a look at our veteran spotlight for Jeremy Miller, a combat veteran of OIF 3, and then our national park spotlight. I think that's going to be good. That's going to be really cool.
I enjoyed that. I didn't even take a break because I was watching the video.
I was too. I actually during the RAF video, I had to get up and go use the restroom because I was busy watching the national park video.
Yeah.
So we had
Puerto
Rican Rambo. And then Life of a Door Gunner in Vietnam. That was an interesting thing. And then, boy, that one's important right there.
The GI Bills, yeah. It's when the GI Bill expires, that hit me hard, man. I was like, come on.
That's
U.S. Constitution.
Yep.
Covered,
presidential duties, or rather, presidential power, more so than duties. And then the shooting in Nashville, very sad event there. Hoping to get some more details on that maybe next week.
Black Hawk helicopters crash outside of Fort Campbell, killing 9 service members.
Another sad story followed by a feel-good story where an American Legionnaire, Virginia Legionnaire, was able to have his legacy of love for other veterans one final time by his family donating his wheelchair ramp to another disabled vet.
That was awesome. Little update on money. And we're out.
Appreciate that. So, guys, you can't change the world, but you can change the world around you.
So don't talk about it, be about it.